Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third annual Asian American Distinguished Speaker Series. My name is Michelle Hawks, and I'm the founding director of the Liu Institute for Asia and Asian Studies at Notre Dame's Keough School of Global Affairs. The Liu Institute's mission is to educate about Asia and its diaspora, including Asian American experiences. With this in mind, we launched the Asian American Distinguished Speaker Series in 2021. One goal of the series is to elevate the visibility of Asian American leadership. For example, right here at home, Notre Dame's first Asian American football coach was appointed in 2021, and the Liu Institute was fortunate to welcome Coach Marcus Freeman as our Asian American Distinguished Speaker in 2022. But discrimination and violence against the Asian community, which skyrocketed during the pandemic, continues, as we all know. For this reason, among many, it was important for us to bring the film Bad Axe and its director, David Siev, to Notre Dame. We're so grateful, David, for your presence here. We're also grateful that Professor Jennifer Huynh, a Liu Institute faculty fellow, accepted our invitation to moderate today's event. Professor Huynh teaches in the Department of American Studies, and we're grateful and honored to have that department as our co-sponsor for the event today. She teaches courses such as the Asian American Experience, Critical Refugee Studies, and Immigrant America. I cannot tell you how often I hear students, especially Asian American students, speaking passionately about how meaningful her courses are. And Professor Huynh's dedication to her field reaches beyond the classroom. Last year, she received the university's Grenville Clark Award, which honors a faculty member whose volunteer activities advance peace and human rights. In Professor Huynh's case, the award recognized her work as a board member with a neighbor-to-neighbor organization which supports the resettlement of refugees. Her work is inspiring and important, and we could not have chosen a more perfect moderator for this event. Please join me in welcoming Professor Huynh to the stage.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Michelle. I'm so happy to be here today in conversation with David Siev. Of course, it would be exciting to host any Academy Award nominated filmmaker, but David's presence is special to our campus because he's both a Midwesterner and Catholic. In case you don't know, the name of the film, Bad Axe, comes from David's hometown, Bad Axe, Michigan, only a few hours away in Michigan's Thumb. You'll learn so much about David from the film and momentarily from David himself, so I will keep this introduction very short. As you'll see in the movie, David grew up in a very close-knit Cambodian and Mexican-American family with 3 sisters who say he was always filming their family life. David said in a recent TED Talk, "I knew that the story I wanted to share one day was my family's American dream story." David studied film at the University of Michigan and spent his early career mastering the versatility of guerrilla filmmaking, which means low budget, skeleton crews, and using whatever resources, locations, and equipment available. His debut film, Year Zero, was based on his father's experiences of surviving the Cambodian genocide during the 1970s. This film won several awards, including an award from the Manhattan International Film Festival, among several others. David lives in New York City now with his wife and partner, Kat Vasquez, who's also a filmmaker. So I'm delighted to welcome David to the stage to say a few words about Bad Axe. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your Sunday to essentially come spend it with my family and learn a bit more about Bad Axe and our story. I don't want to share, too much about the film because you're about to watch it, but this is an incredibly personal piece of filmmaking and storytelling, and it's one that happened, under a time that we all just recently came out of, which was the pandemic. When I started making this film, I had no idea that I was making it. It's something that very much, happened organically. And, as Jennifer mentioned, I always knew I wanted to share my American dream story. And little did I know that it was unfolding right in front of me during the pandemic. This film, in many ways, it's it's my vision for what the American dream is. I feel very lucky that the film has been able to receive the love that it has from the industry and people who just love movies, and individuals all across the country that just connect with the themes of the movie, which is essentially family and community. Please stick around, after the film. One of my favorite parts about having the opportunity to share my family story across the country is the dialogue and the conversations that take place in rooms just like this. Because that's how, I think that's how change happens, is with dialogue, and that's what the power of personal storytelling is. So without further ado, please enjoy my film, Bad X. Thank you so much, everyone. Before I get started, we do have some special guests that I would like to bring up on the stage. My family, they were able to drive from Bad X, Michigan this morning. I'm going to start with welcoming my beautiful mother, Rachel Siev, and then my wonderful wife and producer, Kat Vasquez, and then we have Jacqueline Siev and Michael Meinhold. And one of those babies that you saw that was just born, that's Rhea right here. So please welcome them. Oh, well, no, thank you. It's, every time we get to screen this film and get to be here as a family, it's something I never take for granted, and I don't think any of us take for granted, because it's just so special that the world and audience members all across the country have connected with our story. And I mentioned before the film played that this film in many ways it's talking about what the American dream is today. And this film has made me realize my own American dream in so many ways. I grew up, in Bad X, Michigan, which, as you've learned, it's there's not a lot of people who look like me. There's not a lot of people who look like my family, and let alone, I don't think there's any Cambodians probably in a 100-mile radius, let alone Cambodian Mexicans. So, growing up in this town that I call my home, I always felt this sense of other, this sense of, where do I belong here in Bad X, Michigan? And I don't think I ever quite figured it out until I made this film. And I say that because when you grow up feeling that sense of other, it also means that in many ways you're not quite sure how you fit in with the rest of your community, and you're also not quite sure of what it means to be American. And that was something I struggled with for so long, and I think I speak for my sisters as well too, is that what did it mean to be American, being this Cambodian Mexican family in Bad X, Michigan? Because part of you feels like you're searching for your voice, you're searching for your sense of belonging in a community where you're so different. And I think through the process of growing up in Bad X and, finding my voice in this town that I call home, I did learn what that meant to be American. When I decided I was going to name the film Bad X, it wasn't just a title just because it was a cool title, because Bad X is a pretty cool title. But it was actually deeper than that. For me, I don't know if I ever felt that I could call Bad X my home just as much as any of the other people that lived there. And during the pandemic, when I went on this journey of sharing my family's story, I learned that Bad Axe is just as much my home as anyone else I grew up with. It belongs to me and my family just as much as it belongs to our neighbors and the other community members we grew up with. And in sharing our story, I wanted to expand people's idea and what the perception of what it meant to be American and what the American dream is. Because the reality of that is, when a lot of people in Bad Axe, they look at my family, they didn't look at us as quite being as American as them, right? That's that refugee family, that's that Cambodian Mexican family, right? It was never, that's that American family. And I wanted to flip that on its head by sharing our story, because I truly don't think there is a story more American than that of my family's. America is a land that, unless you're indigenous to this country or you were forced in this country because of slavery, it is a land that is built on the back of immigrants. And I realized that, my family, we are an immigrant family. And there are so many other families that have stories that parallel that of my own. And so when deciding to name the film Bad Axe, I realized, wait, this is my town just as much as anyone else's. And also, this is my country, and this is my family's country just as much as it is as anyone other's. And I wanted to expand the dialogue on that. And look, as a filmmaker, I think I always wanted to believe that what I did could have the power to create change and start dialogue. To be totally honest, I'm not sure if I quite believed that by the time I was done making this film. It seemed kind of just a dream, something I hoped the film would do, but I'm not sure if it quite did. And I think a part of that was me being a bit cynical. Just, it was a year, 2020, 2021 when I finished the film, and being a bit jaded by as far as, what our country had gone through. But I still continued through with the film. I continued to push through because I just hoped that maybe this film would have the opportunity to expand people's views of what the American dream and what it means to be American. Well, it was when we finally had the chance to show the film in Bad Axe that I realized I wasn't so crazy, and that personal storytelling does have so much power in the truth that it portrays. By the time the film had premiered and we showed it in Bad Axe, Michigan, this was in May of 2022, the film had just premiered at South by Southwest, which, for those of you who don't know, South by Southwest, it's one of the biggest film festivals in North America. And this was a film that was made on not much money at all. I maxed out all my credit cards, borrowed as much money from I could from people who were willing to fund it, including the community of Bad Axe who supported the Kickstarter campaign. And so, to think that this film would one day have the chance to propel and excel the way it did, it felt like a dream, and it still does today. And by the time the film was generating all this buzz and receiving all this love from critics and audiences across the United States who were watching at film festivals, it still felt like the true test for what this film has the capability of doing to start conversation. That had to be proven in our hometown of Bad Axe, Michigan. So it was in May of 2022 where we decided we're going to have a hometown screening for the people of Bad Axe, Michigan. And there was so much anxiety, I think, in the entire family. And like I said, at this point, the film was getting all these great reviews, and people in the industry were loving it who had the chance to see it. But the real test was how was Bad Axe, Michigan going to respond to our story? because you see in the film that, there's mixed reactions. There were people stopping my mom at the local grocery store, a few weeks prior, and even while we were filming the movie, saying, I'm not going to support your restaurant anymore because of what your son is doing. We had people on social media sending us messages on our Rachel's of Bad X Facebook page, saying all kinds of hurtful things. People randomly finding my email and sending me the most hateful messages, and it hurt a lot. It really did. And so I think you can understand how much anxiety there was for our family to finally bring this back to our community. Well, we show up to the theater, and it's a full house. And a lot of them are the people who supported the film. I would say probably about 3/4 of the theater were the people that supported the film. And the other quarter of it were, Bad X is a small town. Everyone knows everyone. The other quarter of that theater were, we knew the people that did not support the film. So while this film is playing the entire time, I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Is someone going to throw tomatoes at us? Like, are we going to be heckled out of here? Those were all thoughts that were running through our mind. It's like, what are we going to do if there's confrontation after the screening? And after the film was done playing and the credits had rolled, I had done a similar introduction to this, and I brought my family on stage. And there was just so much love that was met across the entire theater. And when we started the Q&A, I remember there was one individual, and I knew he was someone who did not support the film. And I'm like, oh, this is it. I'm going to have to answer for this, right now, right here. And he shot up his hand, and he said, I don't agree with a single thing on your family politically. But thank you so much for sharing your story and opening up my mind to what a different family has experienced here in our community during the pandemic. And to me, that's a very profound moment I'll always remember as a filmmaker, because I got into filmmaking because I love storytelling, but I got into filmmaking because I want to change the world. And that sounds really big for a little brown boy growing up in Bad X, Michigan, to have ambitions to do that, but those were my ambitions. And following that screening, where I got to see, and we got to see before our very eyes, this conversation happen in our community that never happened before, it made me realize the power of personal storytelling. It's so easy to judge people on the outside and behind a keyboard, but when you get to know someone and you get to know their story, you can have empathy. And that's the power of storytelling, is building that bridge of empathy. So for me, it no longer felt like a dream that, oh, maybe I could do this, but it became a reality. Going back to what the American dream is, you see from my parents, it's something very specific, right? It's about coming to this country. It's about having a family and just be able to provide the financial needs to keep a roof over your head and to feed your family. And that was it. That's all my dad wanted. That's all my father, who was a Cambodian refugee, who came here with nothing but the shirt on his back in the year 1979. That was his vision of the American dream, was to just be able to provide and take care of his family. The American dream has changed. And I think it will continue to change with each generation. Because I think if you ask me and my sisters what the American dream is, yes, it does include all of that, what my father's vision was. But it's also so much more than that.
there's this element that it's having a voice. It's being able to be seen just as American as your neighbor next to you. It's embracing and loving who you are and not something that you should be ashamed of. It's being able to tell your family's personal story and having that be a catalyst of real change that happens in a community. And after that night in Bad Axe, where this film you just watched, the story of Bad Axe, the story of my family, was able to start that dialogue, it made me realize that this is my American dream and it's come true, and I will not ever take a second of it for granted. Because here's the thing about change, is that it happens at a really slow pace. It happens way slower than most of us would like it to, but it's possible. It's possible for the next generation like this to have a better life even than that of my siblings and the generation before that. And change, it happens with one person and one conversation at a time. And so when I say this film is my American dream in many ways, it's true. Because I've seen it firsthand, being able to start conversations with one person at a time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'd like to give the audience time for a few questions. So for the family or for David.
Everyone's always afraid to be the first person to ask questions.
Is there a microphone or? I can talk loud. First of all, thank you.
Thank you.
It was a very moving story, and you're all very brave. Put yourselves out like that. I think the climax of the film for me was when your dad said, "I've seen what hatred can do." And to see how you guys have persevered has been very moving. It's kind of perfect that your dad's not here. But I just wondered, how could you make yourself so vulnerable in so many ways? And yet, I didn't feel like it was sentimental. I was curious about that.
Jacqueline?
I mean, so for me, it's the fact that, I know that as an older sibling, you always look at my little brother as my little brother. So when he was carrying around the camera, honestly, you don't see it as somebody that's documenting or, recording you. This is just David. This is David. It's your little brother who's always got the camera. I mean, there are scenes cut out of it, but it's, even when, I remember our first sushi night and we were busier than we thought we would be. And I was like, where is David? And they're like, he's recording. I'm like, tell him to put down the camera and get back here and start doing rice for us. But just having our family together, I feel like, and with it being your brother, and it was just, it was us. It was just easy to be yourself, have all these conversations are conversations that we've always had as a family. We've actually always had very difficult conversations. As you can see, nobody in our family is, we're all very different from each other. We have different personalities, we have different viewpoints, but my parents have always allowed us to, be different from even each other and speak our mind. And I think that, growing up in a family like that, it's it made it easier to just be ourselves, because we're not perfect, as you can clearly see. People always say after they see the film, like, I feel like I know you. I'm like, you do. You've seen some of the worst of me. You've seen me with no makeup on. You've seen, everything. You've seen my not so pretty parts. And I think that my dad, the first thing my dad always says is, I apologize for my language. That everybody had to see that. That's how he would have started today. But you just, I guess it opening up. It felt like, we obviously saw it, but we knew how important it was once we got to, see the film come along, how important it was to just be real. People see us as real people, and that means showing your good, your bad, your vulnerabilities, and I think that, we just understood that this is what real life is like. This is what a real family is like, and this is what a real community is like. It's much like a family, on a maybe larger level, but we're all different, and we all have different personalities and viewpoints, but that doesn't mean we don't still love each other and we can't still come together. So I think that, kind of sharing that message was important, to be very authentically ourselves, whether, in the good and the bad. So.
Wonderful. Yes, another question? In the vest? Burgundy vest.
You started this film before the pandemic, and you obviously had no idea that such a catastrophic thing was going to come. So what was your vision for the film to begin with, and then how did you expand that through all the trials and tribulations and horror that went on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had no intention of making a documentary when I started filming. The intention I did have was to share my family's story. And going on 9 years now, I've been working every day on a script that's about my father's journey of coming to this country, escaping the killing fields, one of the worst genocides in modern history, making it out alive with his 5 younger siblings and his mom, and then coming to this country with no education, nothing at all, and building a life for himself. That was the American dream story I wanted to share. And like I said, I've been working on this for 9 years now. And when the pandemic started in March of 2020, my wife and I, we left New York to move back home with our family. And as an unemployed filmmaker, I had a lot of time on my hands. So I was like, I'm going to make the most of this. And I'm just going to start sitting down with my parents and my family and just getting our story on camera. Because maybe I can use a lot of this and take it back to the script I've been working on. So that's how the project started. That was, in many ways, the motivation behind picking up the camera in the first place. I think the other part of it is instinctual, as far as knowing that this is such an interesting time we're living in. And, legacy is something that's very important to me and how we teach the next generation about our family's history. So I thought, I'm just going to record hours of home video because I love having a camera in my hand. I love my family. So I'm going to follow them around with the camera much more than I usually have. And where the vision, I never meant to be a documentary filmmaker. I didn't think the first feature film I would make would be a documentary film. That was just something I never had planned for. And it was along the way of just filming every day that I had realized that this American dream story I wanted to always tell about my family, it was coming to life before my very eyes. And you know what? It was coming together in the form of documentary. My script had to be put on hold because there was something more urgent happening in our country. So I want to say that it was around the time of the Black Lives Matter movement happened, actually, that it went from being, I'm filming home videos for my future kids and my nieces and nephews to look at one day to, I think I'm making a movie. And I say that it was around the time of the Black Lives Matter movement because you see in the movie that when our family decides to voice our support for this revolution that's happening in our country, we're met with backlash right away. We have people telling us, stay out of it. What are you doing? Do not get involved in this. We're not going to support you for involved in this. And that's when I started thinking about the idea of being American and being able to use your voice and how the consequences for us were a bit different than other people in Bad Axe, Michigan. And it was at that moment I realized, like, okay, this American dream story is taking place right now because, as I mentioned, the American dream for me is about having a voice and being able to speak loudly and proudly as any other American. And it was that moment, the Black Lives Matter movement, that I realized, oh, that was being challenged. The American dream that I've realized is being challenged in so many ways that I have to tell this story with everything I've been filming right now for the past few months and turn that into what our family's American dream story is today. So that's how the film really progressed in that way. It started off as, a bored filmmaker doing research for another project and just loving filming their family to, oh, wait, okay, I think I actually am filming another part of this story that I'm writing, but there's a real sense of urgency that it needs to be captured right now and it needs to be told through the medium of documentary filmmaking.
Yes. Thank you so much again. And I also just want to have one little thing to say is that you must know that you resemble your father so much when he was young. I was like, that looks like you. But my other question is that what struck me, especially in the beginning of the film, that your family relations, the siblings and the parental and kids relations are so good and almost uncharacteristic of what we know about Asian American families that are actually much better captured by everyone all at once. It's like because the parents came with nothing or with a lot of trauma, so they don't really know how to raise the kids, and so the relations are very, very bad. They cannot talk to each other, and then the second generation also then suffer from a lot of psychological trauma. In a way, I don't really know how your dad did it. That the amount, he should not apologize for his language because it is just like, you guys look so healthy compared with a lot of the dysfunctional families that I know about.
Yeah. No.
We're pretty dysfunctional.
we're pretty dysfunctional.
But we're open about it.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to hear my mom's answer to this because, as me and my wife are, having conversations about starting a family, I'll be honest, I have a lot of doubts and questions about fatherhood. And then I think about how my dad raised me, and I'm thinking, but wait, how the heck did he do it? He was able to do it, and because generational trauma, it's such a overarching theme throughout the film, and it's subtle and it's nuanced, but you see it, and it is something I often ask myself. It's like, wow, I look back at my dad, and he's a great. By the way, my dad can't be here today because he actually just had shoulder surgery 2 days ago. So Raquel and Austin are actually at home taking care of him. He wanted to be here, but he couldn't. But yeah, that's something I'm always so amazed about when I think about my parents who, under the age of, how old was Papa when he first had Jacqueline?
He was 27.
Yeah, under the age of
21.
27 and 21, and I'm thinking, how the heck did he do this? Because despite, all the trauma that he has and how much that even affected the relationship between him and my mom, he still is an incredible dad. And this is something Jacqueline and I talk about, and Jacqueline said this before that really stuck with me, is that, my dad was a great father with some really bad moments. He wasn't a bad father with a few good moments. And that really resonates because it's true. I do believe that about my dad. So I don't know. I feel like this is a more of a question for my mom, but it has definitely struck a lot of questions in me, and I'm sure with Jacqueline and the rest of my siblings as well when we think about how our parents were able to do it.
Yeah, it was. I'd have to say for Chun, speaking for him, I think that he had a mission, right? He felt that he didn't have enough. He was behind on time. And when we decided to get married and we wanted to have children right away, I mean, we just felt like we were scared, but we also were very crazy. We were like, let's do this. We weren't afraid to go ahead and take the risk and just go for it. And failing was not any kind of option for us. So I like to say that, we both were very determined. We both were not afraid to be who we were, and communication was very important. As you can tell in our family, nobody really holds back, but I think that's really important, is to have those very, not just emotional, but difficult conversations with each other, with your children, with your spouse. So I think it was, for us, we were ready to tackle the world and see what we could do. But we were both scared and very young. I think his ambition was just huge. I mean, he walked in the room and he was ready to, let's do this or let's do that. We had many businesses before we got into actual the restaurant business. So we were not afraid to fail, because we did that quite a bit. But we learned a lot, and hopefully don't fail as much as you.
And I think if Papa was here, though, Mom, honestly, I think that my dad would give a lot of credit to the women in his life, being my ma, so my grandma, my dad's mother, and then to my mom, honestly. My dad's always had both of them to keep him in check and keep him in line. He was never able to rule with an iron fist because they wouldn't let him. And then I guess as, me being part of the next generation, I always saw that. I saw that in my, in my grandmother, and I saw that in my mother, where they would hold him accountable, or they would hold each other accountable for things that, we say, or to speak on the way that they felt. So growing up, I saw that. I saw my dad have conversations and fights with my mom growing up. And I saw him have fights with my mom growing up. But it was always from a mutual level of, understanding and where
and talking constantly
and
about
talking
what we just
through
went
it.
through.
And my mom doesn't let it's not. My mom wouldn't let him get away with just getting mad and walking away. My mom would be like, get your butt over here, and So I guess for me, maybe that is what was for my. Not that I can speak for my dad, but from what I've heard him say, and the way he talks now, I would say that my having my grandmother and having my mom as the two main pillars in his life. He always credits everything to my mom. My mom really is the backbone of our family. She's, the voice of reason for all of us.
Someone has to be.
And, I think that obviously our family is very lucky to have such, strong women who have never been afraid to, keep each other in check and speak emotionally about how we're feeling. So I would have to, I think that's what my dad would say. And then from my perspective, that's what I would say, growing up, that was part of our upbringing, where it was just natural for me to speak up against him because I would see my mom or my grandma do it. So I was never afraid to. I knew the worst that's going to come of it is we're just going to end up screaming at each other. But that's the worst thing that's going to happen. We're going to scream, but we're always going to fix it. And maybe not right in that second. And maybe with my dad, I will say his way of apologizing sometimes would be like peeling a bunch of mango or squeezing you. That really is like a thing where,
fruit is his love language.
Fruit is his love language, yes. If there's a fresh bowl of fruit, peeled. But we would always get through it. And even if we were mad, we still had to sit through the dinner table and eat dinner together. And if that meant we didn't talk for the first 10 minutes, then so be it. We're not going to talk for the first 10 minutes. But eventually, we worked together too, all of us growing up. So eventually I think that we just always, we knew that we would be okay. So it was okay to have those vulnerable moments, because the worst that was going to happen is that we're just going to be, mad at each other for a day at the most.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to talking about generational trauma, is that I think my siblings and I have realized that we can repeat a lot of what my father has done, or we can try and learn and grow from it and try and break the cycle. And I think, we all have our issues, our problems, but, my wife, she holds me very accountable of when those are, those issues are creeping up on me, and what we can do is try to learn from it and break those cycles and try and be better. I think Jacqueline has done that a lot in many ways, as I've seen as a mother, which is very incredible. She recognizes a lot of what my dad did, that she's realizing, okay, maybe I can do different. And look, there's some things that she does the same, but she works on it. I think she actively does work on it, as I think the rest of us do, and we just try and be better.
Okay, wonderful. We have time for one last question, right? A student question in the white sweatshirt?
Yeah, absolutely. Can't thank you enough for coming down to Notre Dame. All of you guys, it really means a lot to us. My name's Jack, and this is my sister, Rachel. I guess what I would have to say is that...
I really like your sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're wearing a Rachel sweater?
That sweatshirt was a gift from our grandma, who actually lives in Bad Axe. We grew up going to Rachel's, so it just means a lot that you guys are here. Thank you for kind of being like an extension of our living room for the last 20 or so years. Hearing your story was incredible. I just think, we know what it's like in the Thumb. It's has its faults, but it is certainly home. And I think what's so special about that is America. All across this country, people are seeing the same issues. But I guess speaking of the same issues, coming into 2024, white nationalism, racism, former President Trump, none of those problems that I guess you discussed so eloquently in this story of your life, none of those things are going anywhere. So I guess what would you guys say? I guess in the expression of your story, like a continuation of now in 2024, to add on to Bad Axe.
Yeah. And this is something I think I've have thought a lot about recently, as we're heading to this pivotal year for our country. Like I mentioned, like I said before, change happens really slowly. The people who have seen Bad Axe who did not agree politically with my family, I think I manage a lot of expectations. Do we expect those people to change how they vote on the 2024 ticket? Not necessarily, right? I think I can be realistic about that. But have our family and our story found a way into their hearts that they might have not otherwise known a different experience? Yes, I can say that. And I say it's important to manage expectations, because I think if you're thinking you're going to change the world in that way, you might be disappointed. But I think if you're thinking of, okay, wait, so now that they've learned my family's story and families like us, what does that mean for how they're going to teach their kids, and how their kids are going to teach their kids, and so on and so forth, the generation that follows next after that. And that is where I do have hope in, is that, when it comes to another family, maybe one that looks like ours, that moves into Bad Axe, Michigan, or whatever, another community that has seen this film and has sparked similar dialogue, conversation, could it start these conversations and provide hope for a better future for those next generations? And yes, I do. I think that's what the legacy of this film is. But to your point, yeah, there's a lot of these issues that are still very much prevalent today. The reality is they're going to be for a while. But in sharing our personal story and showing the real, human faces and human voices behind a lot of these issues, I really do think it will start the much needed conversations to enact change. I just think we need to be realistic as far as the expectations of how, what we expect of that. And for me, knowing that this film will have a life beyond, well beyond my own. I think that's what gives me a lot of hope for, thinking 2024 and even beyond.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Yes. Oh, thank you.
I like his answer.
Okay, yes, me too. Thank you so much for everyone for attending, and also to our audience members. Please head to the lobby. There'll be refreshments from A Bite with Me, a locally owned Asian American caterer. So please enjoy, and thank you again for coming to Notre Dame and for this.
Thank you.